The kingdom is in disrepair after the king has made some poor decisions along the way. Use your Viscount to gain prosperity in Viscounts of the West Kingdom.
Hey gang, and thanks for joining us at Tantrum House Studio 3. I'm Will Meadows.
And I'm Sara Meadows, and today we're reviewing the game Viscounts of the West Kingdom from Garphill Games and Renegade Game Studios. It's from designer Shem Phillips and S.J. McDonald, and art is by the Micho.
Now this is the third in the West Kingdom lineup of games. This is a 1 to 4 player roundel-ish worker placement game. We have had an opportunity to play it several times. In fact, we have a playthrough and learn to play video on our channel if you want to check that one out. But right now we're going to give a quick review of it, so stick around.
To set up the game, put together the main board in the center of the table.
Populate it with villager cards and manuscript tokens. Then give each player their player board, colored Viscount, workers, put their buildings and virtue tokens on their board, and give them their starting deck of cards.
Stack up the appropriate number of contracts and debts for your player count, and then you're ready to begin.
At the very beginning of the game, you will determine your starting resources by selecting both a non-starter card and a resource card.
Then on your first turn, you'll draw 3 cards from your deck and play one to your board.
Each turn, you'll slide a new card onto your board, and if it's full, you'll slide one off, taking actions or collecting any resources shown at the bottom.
You'll get to move your Viscount clockwise around the board based on the most recent card you've played.
And during your turn, you can spend any of the resources shown on your cards.
You can pay to do things like build new buildings, which will earn you victory points and ongoing resources.
You can collect manuscripts, which will grant you victory points based on the sets you collect.
You can add workers to the castle and push your way to the top. And you can purchase new cards to add to your deck.
Keeping track of your virtue is key, as collisions may cause you to take on debt.
Once either the contracts or debt stack is empty, the game end will be triggered. One more round is played, points are tallied, and the player with the most points wins.
To think that this is the 6th-ish, depending on expansions and whatever you want to count, in the line of games that Shem Phillips has put out, and to feel how fresh the gameplay feels in it, even though it uses the same icons, the same card art, the same components, this really feels like a new game. Obviously, it is. In the game, you're going to be moving around that board. You've kind of got an inner track and an outer track, and you're going to kind of have 2 sets of actions depending on which area on the board you're actually in. But each turn, you're really only going to be able to pick from a couple different choices, which is great because that card that you play is going to determine how far you move, which is going to determine which action you're actually going to take, and then you've got to base it on all the resources on your board. Just a crazy amount of really smooth, fine-tuned balance that's in this game.
Yes, there's a lot of things that chain themselves into other actions. So using that merchant action to gain the resources that the townsfolk will move across your board, so you're planning that out so that you have the resources when that next card is being played. There is so much thinking behind the scenes on that. I felt like the gameplay itself was a little easier than Paladin's, but I think, yes, just what the actions that you're taking on your turn. It was easier to follow through with what you're doing, but the planning involved, I felt like, was a little bit harder than Paladin's.
Right, it was great. I felt like a lot of things were very streamlined in it. You kind of know, you've got your actions spelled out right across the top of your board, so you know how to kind of follow those and what choices you're going to have. The game makes a lot of sense to play without having to ask 300 times, what is this icon? What does this thing mean? Mm-hmm. But, oh goodness, the choices are crazy. Yeah, you've got 3 cards to choose from. That's going to determine your movements, but it's going to determine what resources you have not just now, but for the next 3-ish turns. So planning ahead is great. I love that in the game you have very little interaction with each other. You do have some if you land on the same space as another player's Viscount. You don't actually hurt yourself or them really. In fact, you help them. They have the opportunity, if you land on the same space, to rearrange their cards in any order that they might want to, which can be huge in the game. Otherwise, besides cards and tiles kind of disappearing, you're not actually interacting with each other, you're just optimizing what you really can do with your next several turns.
Yeah, the only place that you really are interacting is that castle. You do have the availability when you're moving up and down up the castle that you could bump other players off if you choose to. So there is that way that you're going to make them lose some points. They're going to gain some benefits for being bumped off the castle. And then there's also those building spaces where you're taking that spot away from them, but being adjacent to another building will possibly give them a resource or benefit for building there.
Right, I guess I said that a little wrong. You were right. You do kind of interact with each other, but very rarely do you actually harm each other. And maybe that's really what I'm enjoying. Even on those castle walls, which we didn't explain, you can learn the playthrough, but as you get 3 to a level, then they're going to upgrade and one's going to be able to go up. The other 2 are going to go opposite directions. You can't have more than 3 of a color on a round or people get bumped. But if you bump them, they get coins out of it. So yeah, anytime you do interact with each other, it seems it's not mean. There's no meanness.
Yeah, this is not like Architects where there were some very mean actions to pull on other players, removing stuff from the board. There isn't any of that in this game. It's a little more like Paladins, especially in some of the strategies involved in play, where you probably need to pick a focus of what you're going to do. You are building that deck that you have. I think this is a very innovative way to play a deck builder where you have cards that will stay out available to you through multiple turns. I don't know of a lot of deck builders or any I can think of off the top of my head that do that. So that's a completely different planning strategy of your deck than you normally would have.
Right, and you are going to still, like a deck builder, you're going to discard the cards at the end and reshuffle, so it has familiar mechanics but used in a very new way. Overall, the art style for the game matches everything else perfectly, which looks really great. I do enjoy the Micho style a lot, and it looks great on the table. You have your little board, and it's kind of all you kind of have to worry about, except there are some things, again, at the end, too, where you're going to interact. Whoever has the most you're going to deplete one of those 2 stacks, and when one is empty, that's going to determine that the other stack is going to score. Whoever has the most of those cards that they've been able to flip over during the course of the game, they're going to get points for. A lot of stuff going on, but still, I wouldn't say like not as heavy as maybe Architects or the other one. So maybe lighter, but tons of thinking. Tons of thinking.
Yes. So if you're ready for a good brain burner, worker placement and deck building game, you can check out Viscounts of the West Kingdom from Garphill Games. Thank you so much. You can check out a playthrough. We teach you how to play the game when you watch the playthrough, and then also you can watch us as we play through a 4-player game. So check that out.
Thanks so much for subscribing, following along, liking this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Review of it. Stick around.
Once either the contracts or debt stack is empty, the game will end. I cannot read. The game end will be triggered. Okay.
That's what it says.
It is what it says.
Their player board, colored Viscount. I knew I was going to do that. It's only when I read it.